Good morning. This is Talk Back to Television, and I'm here with John Partilla from Screenvision Media. John, how are you?
Good morning, Rick. Terrific. Thank you.
And where are you talking to us from?
I'm talking to us right in the middle of New York City on a gorgeous day. It's one of the nicer days we've had over this long winter. So right in the Midtown area
Good for
where our
you.
offices are.
Good,
Yep.
good for you. Okay, now you've been knocking around the business for quite a while. We share some things in common. We were both at Time Warner.
Correct.
I was a little before you, but then you were at Clear Channel. You were at Dentsu.
Yes.
But let's jump now because as we talked when we were warming up, my world has to do with television and sort of in-home media. And your world is where a lot of our stuff starts. So tell us about Screen Vision. What do you do?
Sure. Well, thanks, Rick. Thanks for being interested. So we're one of two companies, two large-scale companies that exist in the U.S. That really provide a connection between movie-going audiences and brands to connect their messages. And so we, in a nutshell, we develop that pre-show that you see before the trailers. And that
Okay.
pre-show is comprised of things to entertain you and inform you. So you'll see some behind the scenes Hollywood footage and trivia, and you'll see ads, right? And those ads really serve those two sides of the business really effectively. And so brands, obviously, and advertisers are really looking to connect to that hard to reach audience, which are tend to be youthful, diverse cord cutters. And those are people that predominantly go to the movies. And then in terms of the movie theater owners, of which we share the revenue with, the ad revenue with that we make, this is a very meaningful revenue stream for them to keep our movie theaters operating all the way from the very large AMCs all the way down to the mom and pops on Main Street.
Well, it is very important to our business that you keep operating because, as I learned when I was at Showtime, all of Showtime's original content were theatrical movies.
Hmm.
Eventually,
Hmm.
we started doing originals, but they were theatrical movies. And I like to tell people I didn't have to tell the viewers what Top Gun was. They already knew about it because it had had a theatrical exposure before we got it. I just had to say, we got it, right?
That's right. That's
And
right.
and to the extent that as the business has evolved and even streamers like Netflix have realized that from a marketing perspective, theatrical exposure and the push behind that and the buzz and the reviews and all like such as that benefits Netflix right then at the time in the theaters, but also when that show comes over and once on the platform. So you are exceedingly connected to what we do.
Yes, in fact, you raise a very interesting business point, which is for years and years, the system has worked really well for everybody, just as you described, which is a fantastic, best in class piece of content, starts in the movie theater theatrical window. And
Yep.
that was historically, would stay there about 90 days, and then it would move downstream to windows that you've described, hotels, airplanes, and eventually cable, premium cable, and then television and so on. Now, during COVID, everyone was locked, home on their couches, et cetera. And there was a good deal of experimentation around these windows. And, you've, I'm sure, heard of that. There was experimentation around simultaneously release, meaning, hey, let's try releasing things on the streaming devices or the televisions at the same time we're releasing it in the movie theaters. And I was nervous about that, candidly, because I thought, well, geez, when COVID ends, as we all hoped and were confident would at some point, will that sort of hurt our business model? Well, what turned out just very quickly is that once we got through the worst of the pandemic, by then people had realized through all that experimentation that windowing, while they should be shortened somewhat, maybe 90 days was too long. I think we're now at about 45 days for the
Yep.
large polls. It didn't have to be 90, but windows needed to remain because it was the best way to drive the engine of economics for everybody in that value chain, the way you described, from the cinema operators all the way down eventually to the TV.
Okay, now it occurred to me that earlier in COVID, wasn't there a Wonder Woman movie, maybe the 1984 throwback movie that was
That's right.
simultaneous in the theaters and on streaming on
Well,
HBO
there was some
Max?
experimentation. There was obviously once it was mid-March, most things shut down for quite a while. There was a little bit of experimentation starting after Labor Day with Tenet,
Yep.
the
Okay.
And
Yep.
that was in the theaters only because the director really insisted on that. And then
Well,
it
and
went.
now I will say a lot of times the director insists on that because the contracts with the production people and the actors and everybody else requires that. I seem to remember there was a Scarlett Johansson
Well,
kerfuffle
that was the
about that,
following year, but
right?
that's right. And so talent does play a role in these equations. So
Well, the
Tenet came
contracts
out,
do.
right. Tenet came out after Labor Day. And then you're right. The next kind of big release was Wonder Woman 1984 in December. And a lot of people turned out for that. And to be honest, I cannot recall if it was simultaneous or
Or
if it
very
was maybe
shortly
10 days.
thereafter.
Yeah, it might have been X period of time. That's right. I'd have to look it back
What I
up.
do remember is that Max counted on, and we sort of forecasted that they would have a pretty significant bump in new subscriptions for
Yes, that's
people
right.
who wanted to see Wonder Woman. That actually drove, and that was one of the first times we saw that theatrical business actually pop subscriber acquisition, which has always been my side of the world. I don't deal with programming, I deal with getting subs and trying to pay the bills.
That's right.
All right, so now, right now, the theaters are surviving. I cannot say they're necessarily thriving. The windows are changing. We have movies that are moving out, in and out. I know that you'll have a movie that you think is going to be a hit, like the new Snow White, and
Hmm.
it kind of died after a week and got pulled, right? And then sat and fermented a bit, and now it's a wrong word for it, but now it's showing up on Disney Plus eventually.
Yeah,
Um,
you're touching on themes um, that are absolutely occurring, though I feel that we're on a very finally encouraging and healthy trajectory. And I
yep.
agree with you that um, we are recovering but not recovered. And let me just give that a little bit of texture. Um, Prior to the pandemic, it was the movie theater business in terms of tickets purchased in the US was remarkably stable. Rick, there was approximately 1.2 billion theater tickets purchased per year in the US.
Hmm.
And if there's about 350 million, population in the US, ish, that means every man, woman, and child was going, 3 to 4 times a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a
Now,
date night thing. You could actually
yeah, it is,
go
and
and
as I said, particularly youthful audiences and particularly diverse. Now that's reset. That is reset, but it's reset still at a very healthy number. And so right now, the box office this year is predicted to do 9.5 billion of revenues. 9.5. So we'll see if I'm right or the analysts
yeah,
are
yeah.
right on January 1. And in the peak before COVID, it did 11.1 billion. So that's roughly 85% of where it was. And so if we sort of have a proxy of 85% of the audience or the footfall is the reset, that would be a billion tickets purchased per year. That's still a plenty good industry. We're not quite there yet, but I think by 26, that's what we'll be.
That's a lot of eyeballs. Okay, now let's talk about your advertisers because we got to pay attention to time. I know from personal experience, a lot of the advertisers are local,
That's right.
but I also see a lot of national brands. Can you give us a breakdown on just roughly how much of your business is local versus national?
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes of time before the movie begins and a
Yep.
little bit connected. And sometimes we have some post-show inventory that just sort of is a fringe right after the movie start time begins. Um, And we have about half of that time, that 15 minutes dedicated to local and regional advertisers.
Yep.
When you first come in, they're kind of first up. And then the back 7.5 to 8 minutes are the national brands, those kind of blue chip advertisers, the car advertisers, the telephony, the telecom, the
Yep.
technology, the
Yep. Yep.
travel.
Yep.
But we make more money from the back half because that's a little bit more valuable inventory. The rates are higher, and those brands really appreciate those last sort of 7 minutes before the trailer starts. So that's our beachfront property, so to speak.
I get that. Okay, now are you also producing some of the shorts, the content that I see in there? Are
We
you
do. We
okay?
do. And that's a combination. Sometimes we are making it. We have an in-house creative studio run by a terrific creative director. And we also have partnerships, right? Alliances where we'll
Of
go
course.
outside and people want to feature their stuff with us, and we have different agreements around that. But our key is to constantly keep it updated and fresh so that when you go to the movie every month or every other month, you're feeling like you're entertained and interested in that period of time before the movie begins.
Help my viewers understand this because this all of a sudden just got really interesting to me. Um, when you choose what shows to put in, I'll use the word rotation, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Around what was I looking at? Thunderbolts. And
Sure.
we don't have to know if your stuff is connected to Thunderbolts or it's connected to the broad. But when you choose your rotation, if an advertiser can he bid on, can he pay for a slot in your rotation?
Yes, we have everything from direct selling where advertisers
Okay,
will bid
I don't
in.
mean advertisers, I mean content. Can
Oh,
I,
yes.
okay, the trail, who owns the trailers? Who sells
The,
the trailers?
the trailer time is really managed and driven by the theater owners. So
Okay,
they
all
own
right. So
that part.
now, if I have a TV show that
Hmm.
I want to push, whether it's connected to that movie that's going to show or not, do I bring it to you or do I
You
have to
do.
go to I
No, you
bring
would
it to
come to us.
you?
That's right.
Okay,
So
that's
if it's
astonishingly important for a lot of people in my business who are premiering new shows and trying to get them to draw people over to their platform, right?
that's right.
And are looking for eyeballs. So if I've got a new show, let's say, well, I do sort of, but no one ever would ever watch it. If I wanted to syndicate talk back to television, I could actually make a deal with you. And depending on how attractive you think my show is, you might pay me for my show, right?
That's right. It could be any model, Rick.
Or I might pay you to run my show.
That's right. And we're particularly good at long form content that we think is engaging.
What do you
And
consider to
so,
be long form?
well, in a typical TV ad unit, right, you're seeing 30-second and
Okay,
50
so you're
second,
talking
60-second
two minutes
units.
ish, 90
Yeah,
seconds to a
we could
minute.
do 82 seconds. We
Okay,
could do 47 seconds. We
but you're
could
not
do
talking
20
five
seconds.
minutes. That eats up
We're not usually
way too much
talking
of your.
five, but we're talking sometimes 2 minutes-ish. That's right, Rick.
Okay. Well, what's interesting. I've been talking to some people about where social media influencers sit in the world of traditional media. And
Yeah.
what's fascinating is you can have somebody who's doing a show, and I'm going to be a little bit sexist here about eyeliner, right,
Hmm.
on Instagram, and she might have 6 million fans on Instagram, but what she's desperate to do is get on television. And you
Yeah.
ask why? She said, because it's TV. Now,
Right.
in point of fact, that same person could come to you to get into theater,
100%, Rick.
or if that person has worked with a streamer to put her stuff on a streaming platform, that streamer could work with you. And for purposes of targeting the audience, you could be right exactly where they want to be.
That's right. And again, you could be reaching 1 billion eyeballs a year in total in the movie cinema advertising business in the US by 2026. A billion eyeballs
That's
a year.
that's a huge deal. Okay, last question. Do you do advertising that ties to a specific title? Or are you just kind of it's inventory and you've got it?
No, we do almost every shape or form. We usually try to encourage 4 week plans,
Yep.
and that's usually about when a large film. So if someone wants to come in and buy the new Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie or Lilo and Stitch, which is coming up, um, we don't let them buy a weekend or 3 days.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
tend
yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah,
hey,
yeah.
here's the
It's
30
a
day plan.
contract. You're
Yeah, it's a
doing what
30-day
I do.
plan. And that's usually how we sell it in 30-day increments. And that can be for a core, 3 months, but usually 30 days is the minimum,
Okay,
you know.
last question. What happens to you when somebody has a movie called Thunderbolts and you've done something that attaches to Thunderbolts and then they change the name of the damn movie to
Well,
the new Avengers? Is that a scramble on your part of the world? It is.
yes, that would be a scramble. It tends to happen less often than you would think.
I
Usually
know, but
yeah,
if
yes,
if if
usually
they
they give
pulled
us
it off, if they
yeah,
pulled it off successfully and literally papered over the billboards,
right.
right? Somebody's going to say, there's something there. I can sell the same movie twice with two different names. God help
Right.
us.
And that's in the entertainment business, as you know, having worked and we talked about our backgrounds. You've got to be adroit, you've got to be agile. And the
Yeah.
last thing to just say, just back to you going back to some of the movies and how it's recovering, you were right about the Q1 this year and some of the struggles of some of the titles. There wasn't a ton of robust activity. It was about similar to the Q1 before, but once April hit, oh my goodness, it just hit. Look, the business is up, up, up over last year, and that's from the Minecraft movie, which opened at Barbie-like numbers. It did about $160 million that weekend, which is what Barbie opened at 2 summers ago. And then it's been followed up by Sinners, which has been this incredible, horror success. And that now it just continues because you're going into, well, we had Thunderbolts this past weekend. Now you're going to Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible. So we're looking at a very good year now, finally, and that 9.5 billion plus year. So I'm really glad I've had the chance this morning to tell you how excited I am
That's
about the
cool.
recovery, where
Well,
we're going, and I hope to be on again. Thank you.
you're very welcome, and thank you for your time. And we'll see everybody again on the next Talk Back to Television. Bye bye, all.
Thanks, Rick.